come to the parish church, see that the church is in blue, notice that the icon of the Dormition of the Theotokos is out, and no doubt in our powers of perception, we understand that we are still celebrating the feast of the Dormition of the Mother of God, which took place earlier this week, on Friday in fact. Today the Holy Church presents for us a very, I would say, very useful gospel, and one that we don't look very deeply into. Very useful, but we don't really look at it and understand the use so much for ourselves. So let's look at it just briefly. This is the gospel of the vine dressers, the husbandmen. You know, the Lord builds a beautiful vineyard, and He sends in the people to work there, and He sends His workers, His people, like from His office, let's say, to go there and collect the taxes or to collect the fruit when it is ripe. And whenever He sends somebody there, they beat them, or they do some bad thing to them, or they kill them. And so finally He says, all right, that's it, I'm sending my son, and they will honor him. And they say, well, if we kill the son, then we get all this stuff. So they kill him. It's really obvious at the first read that the Lord is aiming this at the Jews that were surrounding Him, so that they understood the reason that He had come. That He had come to give a new law, to get rid of the old law, and that unfortunately His people didn't accept Him. Now, we usually look at that and we're like, yes, those bad Jews, bad Jews. And we don't really think about it at all on ourselves, that this gospel could have anything to do whatsoever with us. But I'm going to submit to you that that's wrong. It's true that He was talking about the Jews, there's no doubt about that. But everything that the Lord said and everything that He did had a meaning then, but it also has an eternal meaning. It has a meaning also for us. It's not like we say, well, those other parts of the gospel, those pertain to me, but this one has nothing to do with me. It's just silliness. Of course, it's not true. It does have something to do with us. So let's look at it a little bit more closely. How did the Lord fix up this very nice place? There were walls there and fences and all sorts of things so that wild animals couldn't come in and attack the vines. I think that we can look at that, and if you read the Fathers and about this gospel, we can look at this place that the Lord prepared, not just as the Old Testament, but as the church writ large. Both those people of the Old Testament who were God's people, and the people who live in the New Testament times as well. And if we look at it from that perspective, then all of a sudden, we are forced to see maybe we are there. Maybe those vines, maybe those are us. And we are commanded to bring forth fruit. But how often, brothers and sisters, are we barren? From a spiritual point of view. How often, given this, if you understand how grapes are grown, it's actually quite miraculous that just generation after generation these grapes come from the vine. This great miracle, the Lord gives us the opportunity to be very fruitful spiritually. Yet, generation after generation, we allow ourselves to be barren. It's not because the Lord doesn't give us everything that's needed to be fruitful. From a spiritual point of view, He does. This is exactly why God came to earth, to establish everything for us, so that we would have every possible opportunity to save our souls. And here is this nice fence that we see as, sometimes we see it as keeping bad away from the church, and that's true. Sometimes we see it as sort of the structure that keeps the church whole, and that's true too. But if we're honest, we spend a whole lot of time trying to knock down that fence because we just don't like the way it looks. It does not work for us. It's a little bit too high, maybe the posts are a little too close together, just not convenient. That structure that God gave to us for our salvation, if we're honest, we don't really like it. We want to do what we want to do. We don't want to do what the Lord told us to do. I mean, we want to go to heaven, but we don't want to work for it. This is why I think this is such a useful and powerful gospel for us. Think of those walls with hedges so strong that it keeps the evil out. And yet we are on the inside trying to knock it down, to let it in. We got to stop that. We need to look at those walls and say, Lord, over those walls. Let's see if I can make them a little stronger by living a good Christian life, by supporting the church, by supporting the efforts of the church to help other people to their salvation, by as much as I can following Christ. You see, our job is to build those walls. And we build those walls by transforming ourselves, by becoming the sons and daughters of God, by raising our children, by raising them to be saints. We don't just have them so that we can house them in a barn for a few years and then get rid of them because they're no longer convenient for us. Children are not an acquisition. It's not a car. It's not a boat. It's a kid. It's a soul that you are responsible for, that we are responsible for as a family. We have to help them to bear fruit. If we just house them like cattle, what does that do? Nothing. Not only does it hurt them, but how will we answer to God for that? We are in this hedge. The Lord gave us this beautiful thing, and nonetheless, we are always trying to cut it down, break it down, and poison it, and let in everything bad in the world. So, brothers and sisters, the message of this sermon is not, yes, let's hide from the world. Let's hide our children from the world, and we will hide from the world too, and the bad world will not get us. Not true. It doesn't matter where you hide. The world will find you. What we need to do is face it with Christ by our side, so that we are going in to this place where there are all sorts of ideas. There are good ideas, there are bad ideas, there are good people, there are bad people. And we are able, with God's help, to filter out the bad and to let in the good. So that that hedge that the Lord built for us acts as a way to allow us to interact with the world positively. Because if we don't interact with the world, how will we raise the world up to God? It's rhetorical. You can't. We must interact with the world. We live in the world. But brothers and sisters, let's stop trying to bang down that fence. Let's stop trying to cut down the hedges. Let's stop trying to say, yes, let every bad thing come into my life. It's our responsibility as adults to, as much as we can, build that sort of a filter where we let in the good and keep out the bad. And to teach our children to build such a filter also, so that in comes the good, but the filter filters out the bad. If we do that, brothers and sisters, then we can easily live in the world. Not only will we be not overtaken by it, but we will be an example to others who are seeking salvation. Let's see this gospel, brothers and sisters. Let's read it when we go home. Let's think about it. And let's think about how, sadly, we are often trying to break down that hedge that the Lord gave to us for our salvation, for our protection, so that we may more easily save our souls. And let's build it up. And let's build our filter. And let's interact with the world in a positive way as an example of a Christian. Not with pride, but with humility. And if we do that, brothers and sisters, then more and more and more people will want to engage with that love of God. More and more people will come to Him, and more people will attain salvation. And the Lord grant this to all of us. Amen. Pray for the salvation of your washed and the